many establishment Republicans, they are definitely fired up over these tariffs. They're saying, you know, as it plays in Peoria, but will it really? Trade was a major issue for Trump voters in steel-producing states like Ohio and Pennsylvania, places where white working-class Americans have seen their wages stagnate over the last, 30 years? Democratic congressional candidate Karl Rove says for too long, China has been making cheap steel and they've been flooding the market with it. It's not fair. It's not right. So I actually think this is long overdue. Gosh, it's like the parties are kind of switching around. Suddenly I've got Democrats that are fiscal conservatives. I've got Democrats that are agreeing with the president's trade policy. What does it all mean for 2018? Joining me with more, Fox News contributor Karl Rove. Karl, does it feel like, you know, everybody's kind of going this way or that way, and traditional party platforms are in some way being rather abandoned?
Well, for me, it's deja vu all over again, since in 2002, the Bush administration applied a much narrower set of tariffs designed to get at Chinese dumping. For example, Mexico and Canada were excluded from them. But by the end of 2003, our trading partners had used their power to put tariffs or threaten tariffs not only on things like bourbon made in Mitch McConnell's hometown or motorcycles built in Paul Ryan's home state, but on real things that real people around the world bought from the United States. And the price of keeping it in place, the price of keeping them in place was too high, and those were narrowly drawn. Look, Mr. Lamb there, Connor Lamb, running for Congress in Pennsylvania, says the problem is China, and we ought to do something about China. China represents 2% of the imports. So if we're trying to get at China, why don't we talk about Chinese dumping practices and hit China, which is dumping steel, rather than our neighbors, Canada and Mexico, which are selling it not at a subsidized price, but at their market price.
Maybe it's about something else, though, Karl. I mean, as Art Laffer was saying earlier, maybe this is about NAFTA.
Well, maybe it is, but you know what? Here's the deal. I'm willing to exclude Canada and Mexico if they do something for me. Well, remember what we want from Mexico and Canada. We want two things. One is we want the ability to end the agreement in 5 years automatically. Has to be renewed every 5 years. What company is going to say, I'm going to commit to a long-term sort of supply chain that's going to be, that could disappear in 5 years? And second of all, we want to have an even higher percentage of the content of automobiles made in the north in the hemisphere to be made out of American content. Well, we were already testing the limits of what the World Trading Organization would consider to be a protection measure, and we want to raise it even higher. And again, the president keeps making statements that are simply not true, with all due respect. We have a big trade deficit, he says, with Canada. Not true. We have a trade surplus. They buy more goods. We buy more goods from them than they buy from us in goods, but they buy more services from us than we buy from them. And so we run a several billions of dollars a year trade surplus with Canada, and the president can't acknowledge
because
that.
Look at this number, and I'm going to confirm it with my producing team there in the control room, but we're looking at, is that correct, guys, a $17.6 billion trade deficit with Canada. So I hear what you're saying in terms of services.
No. That is incorrect. That is in goods only. It doesn't take into account services. Look, a job in Columbus, Ohio, selling insurance is just as good as a job in Columbus, Ohio, making something.
So here's the problem, though, Karl, and this is, and I don't know the answers for this, so you know, I'm not going to take a side in this debate here with you, but the challenge is you go through all these small towns, and I know you visit a lot of them in Middle America, and there were people there that once had the opportunity to earn a good living and, you know, one parent working, take care of their family, go on the annual family vacation, have 2 cars, the dog, the picket fence, the whole 9 yards. And we don't have that anymore. And, you know, those are people that worked in manufacturing. And maybe they can't sell insurance. Maybe that's a different skill set. So what do we do about all those people that depended on those jobs? I know everybody said, oh, they could just get re-educated.
Look, there's
but they're not going to turn into engineers.
Yeah, there's no easy answer to it, because look at the kind of steel companies around the world that are making money today. They're highly mechanized, highly automated, with a much smaller workforce. There's an example talked about today in the Wall Street Journal in Austria. It makes, with 14 employees, I think it is, it makes as many, or excuse me, 140 employees, it makes as much steel wire as a factory with 1,000 employees used to make. So one of the problems that we're going to have is that those jobs that have gone away, even if we're able to bring them back, it's going to be the result of A, capital investment, and B, training our workers for the automated skills that are needed to run today's factories. Now, some places are doing it well. You take a look in Northeast Ohio, for example, at Timken, which makes sophisticated ball bearing assemblies, and they have focused clearly on the question of how do we have a workforce that we can continually upgrade and train with the new skills needed to make us competitive on the world stage, and how can we control our costs, namely the biggest one, energy, in order to be competitive. And they've achieved it. But not every company has been as thoughtful and smart as Timken in facing the future and saying we have an obligation to the people in our community to make certain that our community college, our local colleges, and our own training programs equip them for the jobs that are going to be good and durable.
We do have that obligation. Carl, so what does it mean for midterms? Because, you know, I was looking through, but there's 25 races up for grabs here, and you get a lot of places like Pennsylvania and Minnesota and some of these areas that would respond, I would think, politically well to the tariffs.
Well, we'll see, because this is the first act. And the president, we'll see, first of all, when the detail comes out next week. Are we really going to punish our neighbors and our allies like Canada? In a time of war, quote, for national security reasons, we would want to have neighbors with strong steel industries to support us. Second of all, what's going to happen to there are 140,000 people who work in steel, but there are 6.5 million people who use metal in their industries. So what's going to happen there? And third, what's going to happen with when they start sanctioning the sale of U.S. soybeans or other U.S. commodities or goods in retaliation? We can't be good for us. But this is just the opening stage. We'll see how well the president plays this hand.
Look, I just, you know, I keep thinking about those small towns in America where they feel like they haven't been served by their politicians, and that basically all these jobs were just exported overseas.
Well, you know what? A lot of those jobs went away. If you take a look at our economy today, the percentage of our economy that comes from manufacturing is essentially the same that it's been for decade upon decade. But the number of people working in manufacturing is considerably less, because it takes us today, in order to be competitive, we have to be more productive, which means we do more with less people, because we use automation and skill sets that have gone, that mean that those jobs, as they used to be constituted, have gone away. We got to figure out how to train our workers better and assist them to get to where the jobs are.
I agree with you on that for sure. Karl Rove, thank you very much. Good to see you, sir.
You bet.